Lesson 3. Component. Here we will be looking at component types, option bar, hosts, and learning a family. Grids. Here we will be looking at uses of a grid, adding grids, and grid properties and characteristics. Columns. Here we will be looking at adding columns, properties, and modifying in-place columns.
So grids. Grids are used to draw our walls around, and also use the grids to add our structural columns, so the structural around our building. So first of all, let's add grids. So go to Architecture tab and scroll across the ribbon to Grid. Click on the Grid tool and then pick on the line under the draw box. Okay, so now we need to change the offset over here. Change the offset in the editable box to 3000 millimeters. Click enter and there we go. So now let's draw our first line. Zoom in a bit. Let's draw our first line. Okay, so there's our first line. We need to change this to alphabetical system, so change it to A. It might come up on 1 or a different number on yours, but change the top bobblehead by double clicking or going over to the properties palette to the left and clicking to rename it to A. So now we need to add B, C and D and more. So we need to click onto the grid tool again, click onto pick lines and change the offset to 3000 millimeters again and click lock. Okay, that allows us to automatically pick a line and it will copy it over to the right or the left 3000 millimeters away. So we want to go to the right, so if you can see this highlighted dotted line to the right, if we move it to the left a bit, the cursor, you can see the highlighted dotted line to the left. So let's do it to the right. Okay, now as you can see, there's B, which is placed where the highlighted line was. So now you'll see where that highlighted line is, it will become C. So there's C. Okay, now we're going to move on to D. Now there is E, F, and G. We'll stop at G. Okay, that's enough. So now we want to make lines go across. So what we need to do is go back to the grid and then click onto the line tool, and we don't need to change the offset this time, we can just make lines go across. So let's make a line going across here. Okay, so now we need to change it to a numbering system, so double click again and click 1. Okay, so now we need to make more, so number 2, 3 and 4 and so on. So click on the grid tool again, click on the line, and it doesn't matter how far away it is, make sure it's aligned with, as you can see, the highlighted line there. That's to keep it in line, so that's in line there. So there's our 2, 3, 4, and let's do 5. So there's our 5. As you can see, they're not equally spaced as A, B, C, the alphabetical ones. So the number ones need to be more in space. So what we need to do is we need to align them. So if you go back to the grid tool, go to measure, click on the aligned dimension tool, and we need to click onto this bottom number 5 line here and number 1 up here. Drag it out to about here. So now we need to make these 1, 2 number system while grid lines need to be equally spaced. So we need to click on the same grid line and click on every single one. So there's 2 and 1. So we've clicked on them all here. Now we've got aligned here. So let's drag them out again and place it about there. Now as you can see, they're not equally spaced. So we need to click on the aligned lines and click onto this little text here called EQ. Click on that and it will make them all equally spaced, as you can see now. So that's adding grids. Okay, so now we're moving on to columns. So go to your structure tab on the ribbon and click on the column tool. Now we want to add columns at every bit where the grid joins, so in every single crosshair. So to do that, an easy way is to go to the add grid tool and highlight all of the full grid and click on finish. Ignore the warning message and go to your 3D view and you'll see you have your columns. The reason the warning message came up is because they have the columns are buried under the ground level, so it wasn't actually based on the ground level. So it's edit that bit out. So we want to put all these columns going up to throughout the building, so to the second floor. So to do that, we want to go into 3D view and highlight all the columns. Go to your properties palette to your left and change the top level to the second floor. As you can see, all the columns have rows. Okay, so you can change the way you look at the display of the columns. So if you go over to the visual style graphics display window at the bottom, you can change it to stuff like wireframe. We have shaded, what was just on. We have realistic type. So as you can see, we have different ways you can view the columns. So let's change it back to display. So let's change it back to shaded. So, what else can we do with columns? Well, we want to add slabs at the bottom, so we need to isolate these columns. So what we need to do is we need to go to the ground level floor plan, and we need to click on structure tool and click on isolated. Click yes. Okay, so now we need to choose what type of foundation we want. So we go to structural foundations and we will pick the rectangular block. Okay, so now we want to do the same thing as we did with the columns. So we need to go to add grids again, highlight all the grid and click finish. Ignore the warning message again, it's because it's buried below the ground level. As we go to east view, you will see that. Now we go to 3D view